they want to give in because they're tired of fighting the battle. They won't seek someone who has any kind of different attitude because they don't want to admit that they have a problem. When dealing with this person or people, you will find out that they are normal, you are not. And because they're normal, they have always felt like this and lived like this. When I was a little boy, we used to, every time that one of my brother or sisters had a birthday, we would give, our daddy would give them what was called a birthday whipping.
Yeah.
Well, I thought everybody did that. I was raised with that. When my children came along, yeah, it probably is child abuse. When my children came along, I just naturally did the same thing. I didn't find out that everybody doesn't do that. Like you say, there's some kids that have never had a whipping. The sad part about it is having no way to instruct them. They have never been able to comprehend the love of God and the blessings that are astounding that we can appeal to get out of this state of depression. I've never had enough sense to be depressed.
Amen, brother.
I've never had enough time.
Well, yeah.
There's always something that's pushing or driving me that I never could sit around and feel sorry for myself.
Idleness is a work of the devil.
Well, but I find that there's a lot of great people in the Old Testament that we never study that were depressed. And the story we want to study tonight is of one of the great heroes of the Old Testament period by the name of Elijah. Do you know the story of Elijah? Go to the book of 1 Kings, the 18th chapter. And you will find the story of a man named Elijah and the confrontation that he had with Ahab and Jezebel and the prophets of Jezebel on a place called Mount Carmel. 18. 1 Kings 18. It came to pass. Sir? Well, if you want to read it, have you never read the story? If you've never read the story, well, they're after a lot of things, because what you've not studied and thought about is 1 Kings 19. Now, if you get 18 down, you get a psychological boost that is overwhelmingly great. What happened? Do you want to read it? Or do you want me to tell you the story? Okay.
This is where he does priests of Baal in.
Yeah.
After he does that, then he thinks he's Jezebel's going to kill him, and he's the only one. He's the only guy left.
So what did he do? He got depressed.
Yeah.
So now, you want me to tell you the story, or you want to tell me? I don't care.
No, we'll listen. You may.
So Elijah was a prophet of God in a time that it wasn't profitable to be a prophet of God because of the king. King Ahab married a woman who was a devil worshiper by the name of Jezebel. If you don't know much about Jezebel, you've not ever studied much with the old saints of 100 years ago. And Elijah was the lone prophet of God that was trying to get the children of Israel, sadly and strangely enough, to come back to God. And so the way Elijah did this was to schedule a public debate. The children of Israel did not know anything about Jehovah God. So in this public arena, Elijah called them to Mount Carmel. And he went up against the 72 prophets of Jezebel. When he went up against the 72 prophets of God, he challenged them with a test. He had never, ever shown such a dramatic change in his life as was evidenced in the challenge at Mount Carmel. It came to pass as he was there, he challenged them to see who was God. The children of Israel didn't know. So he called all the prophets of Baal, and he alone on the other side, because in verse 18 of the 18th chapter, he was accused of being the prophet who troubled Israel. And he was defending God. So in the 20th verse, so Ahab sent unto all the children of Israel and gathered the prophets together unto Mount Carmel. And Elijah came unto all the people and said, How long will ye halt between two opinions? If the Lord be God, follow him. And if Baal, follow him. And the people answered not a word. Now herein, my folk, my friends, is the answer to depression. If God is God, do what he says. If he's not, you've already kicked him off to the curb. Just come out and openly admit it. Then said Elijah, verse 22, unto the people, I, even I only, remain a prophet of the Lord. But Baal's prophets are 450 men. Maybe you don't think that's a little uneven in terms, but 450 verses 1. There are a lot of people who have hidden agendas. They do political posturing. They establish hypocritical fronts. They listen to one another or somebody that feels sorry for themselves like they do. They cry together. They talk about how that everybody else is feeling mean and bad to them. But they never challenge each other to a different kind of concept of life. Because there is something about defeatism that causes a person to feel comfortable. I am the only one that understands me. So he tells the prophets of Baal, show if your God is God. And here's what he did. Verse 25. Elijah said unto the prophets of Baal, choose you a bullock for yourselves. Dress it first, for ye are many. And call on the name of your gods, but put no fire under it. Now, it's kind of hard to offer a sacrifice if you don't have a fire. And they took the bullock, which was given them, and they dressed it, and called on the name of Baal from morning even until noon, saying, O Baal, hear us. But there was no voice, nor any that answered. And they leaped upon the altar which was made. Now, I want you to watch this. If you don't see society in this light today, you'll begin to realize it. So they leaped upon this animal that they had sacrificed. When they leaped upon the altar that was made, Elijah began to mock them. and said, cry aloud. If he's God, either he is talking or pursuing, or he's journeying, or peradventure he sleepeth and needs to be awakened. And they cried aloud, now listen to themselves, cut themselves after the manner with knives and lancets, till the blood gushed out upon them. Does this sound like what you hear and see in a lot of places today? It came to pass, when midday was past, and they prophesied until the time of the offering of the evening sacrifice, which was 3 o'clock. There was neither voice nor any answer, nor any that regarded. And Elijah said unto all the people, come near unto me. And all the people came near unto him. Now it's 450 versus 1. Odds weren't too stacked in his favor. And Elijah took 12 stones, verse 31, according to the number of the tribes of the sons of Jacob, unto whom the word of the Lord had come, saying, Israel shall be my name, be thy name. And with the stones he built an altar in the name of the Lord. And he made a trench about the altar, as great as would contain 2 measures of seed. Now you know how much a measure of seed was? About 5, as far as I can understand, about a 5-gallon bushel bucket. A whole bunch. How's that? And he put wood in order, and cut the bullock in pieces, and laid him on the wood, and said, fill 4 barrels with water, and pour it on the burnt sacrifice and on the wood. Now this guy's going to offer a sacrifice, and he's putting seed that's going to kill any fire. And then he pours water on it, and he's going to offer a sacrifice? With what kind of match is he going to use? And he said, do it a second time. And they did it the second time. He said, do it a third time. And they did it the third time. Now, nobody sees this too much, but this shows the intensity of the understanding that there are 3 beings called God that have the same nature and the same strength. And he was going to show them what he was going to prove. And the water ran out about the altar, and it filled the trench also with water. And it came to pass at the time of the offering of the evening sacrifice, 3 o'clock, that Elijah the prophet came near and said, Lord God of Abraham, Isaac, and of Israel, let it be known this day that thou art the God in Israel, and that I am thy servant, and that I have done all these things at thy word. Somebody says, where did he get these crazy ideas? Well, now we know. Hear me, O Lord, hear me, that this people may know that thou art the Lord God, and that thou hast turned their heart back again. Do you know who came in the spirit of Elijah? John the Baptist. So you're looking at his forerunner, his predecessor. And John the Baptist had the same attitude of heart. Or, in other words, he didn't know how to spell defeat.
I'm only one crying in the wilderness.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then the fire of the Lord fell and consumed the burnt offering or sacrifice, and the wood, and the stones, and the dust, and it licked up the water that was in the trench. I can just imagine, wasn't there, can't know unless I'm guessing, and if I'm guessing and you don't like my guess, that's all right. I just imagine they got a little sunburn, windburn, and I'll bet you their face was as red as a beet. You get a fire this hot and get this close, and you'll suffer. Elijah said unto them, take the prophets of Baal, let not one of them escape. and they took them. And Elijah did what these people who are satisfied with being depressed will never do. He slew them. Now, he literally killed them. All we have to do is stop what they have begun so we can begin a healing process that God allows. Now, in the power of Elijah, of course, the drought ended and all that. But in the power of Elijah, the next thing you hear about Elijah is that he runs. Look at 1 Kings 19. And Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done. Their next tails weren't working that day. And so Jezebel didn't know that she was profitless, because he'd killed all of them. And so the one who had the, as we used to say in Tennessee, the spizzerinctum. You know what spizzerinctum is? She had the gusto. She had the power. She was the one that ran the joint. Jezebel was the power behind Ahab. He didn't have any on his own. So Jezebel sent a messenger unto Elijah, saying, so let the gods do to me, and more also, if I make not thy life as the life of one of them that you slew by tomorrow about this time. Now, what would you think Elijah would have thought? I just wasted 450 of you boys. Israel is on my side because I showed them who was God. God evidenced the fact that I'm his prophet. You sending me a message that you're going to kill me? There should have never been a consideration. But look what happened. And when he saw that, he arose and did what? He ran like a scared dog. He wasn't afraid of the 450 prophets. He wasn't afraid of the nation of Israel. He wasn't afraid that he was the only one against 450 of them. But she got in his head. And when she got in his head, he ran. Where he ran to is very interesting. He himself went a day's journey into the wilderness and came and sat down under a juniper tree. We know another prophet who sat under a juniper tree, right? We'll probably talk about him. Anybody remember who he was? Jonah. And why did Jonah sit under a juniper tree?
He didn't want to do what God wanted to do.
He was depressed. See, that's the word that they use. All right, so he sat under a juniper tree. And he requested for himself that he might... Oh, I can't live like this. I mean, he just conquered the world. He just saved the whole nation of Israel. He just called all the enemies of God to be killed. And this one woman got in his head. And now he's decided that he wants to die. And said, it is enough now, O Lord. I've done what you asked me to do. Now do what I ask you to do. Take my life. For I am not better than my fathers. I have no reason to extol the greatness and the power and the majesty of your name. And I want to die. And as he lay and slept, you've missed the point. Why did he lay and sleep? Wanted to die? I don't think so. But that's all right. That's all right with me. It is a usual conclusion of people who are in a state of depression to sleep. It's a getaway. They're hiding from reality. They are so depressed they can't stand to live.
You can understand why he was depressed. He just slayed 450
Would that? You think that would? I thought that would give him a charge.
I disagree with you. I don't understand it.
Well, it's not so much that he just took a life, and that's his thoughts, even though he done it under God's direction. So,
And you think that bothered him?
450 times.
450 times of them. Yeah. Well, let's keep going.
Trying to beat the devil.
Huh?
Trying to beat the devil.
Yeah. He was sleeping it off. He had gone into a system of serious depression. I have a person that every once in a while I deal with, and when the going gets rough and the tough get going, he'll say, "I'm depressed. I've got to go to sleep." Now, I don't know what these people dream about when they go to sleep, and maybe they don't dream, but I've never been able to go to sleep that I don't dream about something that I remember. But the point is, they were going into a cave. They were going into a darkness. They were going into a hole. They're going into something that they were allowed to be given the right to do. They got to get away from society, because they're the only ones that are mistreated and harmed. And so what they have to do is go off into some serious place of darkness. They don't want to be challenged. They don't want to ever consider seriously that there may be some help for them, or medication, or that God might still be in control, or that there is some way that by talking to somebody else they could be helped. It's like this guy just kept saying, "I'm depressed. I'm depressed." If society is around, they'll go away from society. They'll go off in a room. They'll go off in a cave. Or, as Elijah did, he went out to where there was no life. He went to a deserted place. All right, let's keep reading. And he looked, and behold, an angel touched him and said unto him, "Arise and eat." And he looked, and behold, there was a cake baked on the coals, and a cruse of water at his head. And he said, the angel said, "Eat and drink." And he laid down again. He's going to sleep off some more. And the angel of the Lord came again the second time and touched him and said, "Arise and eat, because the journey is too great for thee." And he arose and did eat and drink, and went in the strength of that meat for 40 days and 40 nights unto Horeb, the Mount of God. You know what Horeb is? The Gentile name for Mount Sinai. Maybe you've heard that every once in a while God visited Mount Sinai. All right. So whether he did it on purpose or whether he realized where he was going, he was making something happen that he maybe didn't realize. Maybe you don't know this. Winston Churchill was a man given to grave doubts of depression. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
But Winston Churchill is the human being that caused a nation not to go into depression. You know why that England didn't fall and France did?
France didn't have a leader.
France went into depression. The Nazis got into their mind, got control of their brain, and was going. Churchill called depression the black dog of depression. They struggle without finding help. They hopefully will discuss or allow a response that sometimes they've never considered, but most of the time they didn't. I'll tell you some more people that are given to depression that you'll know in history. Abraham Lincoln. And you probably figured this out if you've ever read it. He either was a drunk or had found him some good stuff. Edgar Allan Poe. You ever read the poetry of Edgar Allan? Marilyn Monroe, they claim, went into, and Rod Steiger, and that this guy that's that singing dude, Martin Luther, Charles Spurgeon. Charles Spurgeon was the one that started really the Methodist Church. Even Moses was given to fits of depression. Remember when Moses was bringing the children of Israel out? He asked God, he said, let me curse the day of my birth. Or, my spirit is broken, my days are extinguished, and the grave is ready for me.
I've often wondered how Noah did it.
I'm going to tell you the guy we're going to talk about. It's Job. Now, y'all can talk all about all the people you want to. I've never seen anybody with boils from the top of his head to the soles of his feet with no, you know what boils are? If you ever had any, hopefully you haven't.
No, they're terrible.
If you can't sit down on one, you can't lay down with one. It's worse than gout times 10, they tell me. And I've had some gout, and I don't want anything times 10. And what was it that Job's best friend came and told him to do?
Give up and die.
Curse God and die. And you know what the Bible says about Job? And in all these things, Job charged not God foolishly. Elijah the prophet was incapacitated. Why? He was depressed. After one of the greatest shows that God had ever given mankind, and him being able to destroy the false religion of Jezebel, this got into his head. I'll never forget when I was a little boy, they used to sing the old spiritual song from the South. Nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Nobody knows my sorrow. I think sweetheart Hillary got up and recited this the other day. Nobody knows my sorrow. I feel sorry for myself, and it feels good for me to be sorry for me. You know why it feels good for me to be sorry for me? I'm the only one that God has ever cursed with such a plague. Symptoms of these diseases or this idea or concept is all around us. They feel tired. They feel weak. Their arms are heavy. They're agitated and fearful. They don't want to go out into the public. They don't want to go out into the light of day. They want to concentrate on the fact that they can feel sorry for themselves and feel like that nobody else loves them, not even God. They sleep to escape. They feel angry all the time. Why? Well, what happened to Elijah? Well, God kept chasing him. And he says, I've been very jealous, verse 10 of 1 Kings 19. And he said, I've been very jealous for the Lord of hosts. For the children of Israel had forsaken thy covenant, thrown down thine altars, and slain thy prophets with the sword. And I only am left. And they seek my life to take it away. So I'm going to give in, let them have it. I don't know if you've ever studied military history, but I had to when I was playing Army. It was one of the most astounding feats that anybody had ever seen in the Korean conflict, they call it, in the 50s. When 2 Korean soldiers could keep 4 regiments of American soldiers in hostile campgrounds, and the American soldier would not try to escape. Now, the American Army found out about this, and they figured out they better figure out some way to get out of these people the idea that somebody can control your mind. Imagine if you've got 25 or 30,000 men are held by 2. You know what you saw in World War II? Did you ever see that? There was a series on television about it. Was it Hogan's Heroes? And what was going on with Hogan's Heroes?
They were a bunch of spies.
You never could get the best of them.
Yeah.
They never were depressed. Why? They'd been raised with a different mindset. I need to escape. I need to leave the room. I need to be off by myself. Or that song that they sang on the, what was the Hillbilly program? Yeah, no, something, despair and agony on me. Deep, dark depression, huh? Yeehaw, that was it. Do you remember that song? They used to come on and I'd say to myself, man, that guy, so whoever wrote that knew what was going on. Well, what was that first word? Something, despair, and secret agony. Deep, dark depressions, excessive misery. If it weren't for bad luck, I'd have no luck at all. Doom, despair. I mean, man, when you get around somebody like this, you could almost smell the stench that they put off. They stink with this stuff. If they can't feel depressed, if they can't feel like that somebody is taking advantage of them, if they can't exist because that's their comfort. They can't concentrate on the fact. And I used to tell this one woman I used to try to help a lot. You say 3 things that will change your life. I'm saved, I'm loved, and God hears my prayer. Anytime you get into a position that you just can't make life work and you think that you're the only one that's ever been treated in this kind of a situation, you just got to look around. Who are you? Well, who am I? I'm a child of God. What does that mean? Man, I've got a chance. I've got a hope. The Apostle Paul says, the time of my departure is at hand. Now, boys, you just take me out there and cut my head off. No. He says, I've fought a good fight. I've finished the course. And I've kept the faith. Henceforth there's laid up for me a crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, shall give unto me in that day, and not to me only, but to all them that love his appearing. He didn't have a fearful, agitated view of tomorrow. He didn't think that everybody was trying to do him in. Like this old song, and I keep going to these songs because they're a great teacher. This old song goes like this. There came a time when I didn't have a dime. Couldn't call on nobody but the Lord. He heard my plea, came down to see about me, and he's my all in all. When they put me down, he picks me up. Makes my feet stand on solid ground when the going gets rough. I got the Lord. I got the Lord. And that's enough. That's enough. That's enough. People are given this idea that they can live in an aggressive, inward, unexpressed anger that is called depression. They lose their self-esteem. They find themselves not being able to respond to unpleasant experiences. There's no prescription drug that they can take that can actually kick it. If you don't think people are after that prescription, you've got to look around the world about you. They were on the bottle, then they got to this, then they got to that. Prozac is not the gospel of Christ. The stigma that you associate with yourself with those who cannot win and cannot overcome just may not be true. And the mask of melancholy does do nothing but bring destruction. Don't stand in the waters so long that your skin rots. Leanna was talking today. She called me on the phone and she said, you know, Daddy, she said the horses in Texas have stood in the water so long, their skin is rotting on their legs. There are people that stay in that kind of frame of mind or position. The fight's gone. They're incapacitated. It feels good because they like to feel sorry for themselves anyway. They're the only ones that know they're important. Nobody else has figured that out. See, that's the idea. And these orders of digression that is called depression is now given a legitimacy that when the world was trying to survive and exist was not allowed. One of the greatest generals in the American Army was a man that they've made movies about lately or years ago, General Patton. Patton said he never knew a day in his life that he was depressed. Somebody said he had such an ego he couldn't have it. Well, okay. The ego is what kept him going and kept him going. Oh, yeah, he liked himself.
He's reincarnated.
Sir?
He believed in reincarnation.
Did he? Do I believe in it?
Oh, he believed that.
Oh, he believed. Well, he believed a lot of things wrong. Yeah, but there was one thing about him. You remember in World War I when they had the Battle of the Bulge? You know the story if you've ever studied military history. They had the Battle of the Bulge, and the Germans were advancing on all sides, and they were overrunning the American army and all, and they sent the message to the commander of the American army and asked him to surrender. Do you remember what he sent them back as a response? Nuts. Are you crazy? It's an interesting thing the way life gets a hold of people and won't let them free. But remember, you're saved, you're a child of God, and God will hear your prayer.
What else you need?
Sir?
What else you need?
That's right. Well, what else is there? So you're going to have it bad. I guess about everybody's had a little of that. Bad comes along everywhere, I know. You just keep waiting and working and believing and staying awake to the opportunities. David said, I once was young, but now I'm old. I've never seen the righteous forsaken, nor their seed begging bread. They don't give up to anything else. They get out and get them a job. My brother and I went one time. I never got any welfare money or anything my whole life. So we got down and out and didn't have a job, couldn't find one. He couldn't beg, borrow, bum, or steal one. So we went over to go to sign up for welfare. We went in there about 9 o'clock, and the place was just full as it could be. And they gave us a number. I'll never forget his number. Mine was, I don't know what Cheryl's was, 239. Well, it didn't faze me that way. Until I'd been standing there, and it's about 11:15, and they called out, 2. I said, 2? And I've got 239? That means I ain't never going to get anything. So the best thing for me to do is to give you back this ticket and go get me a shovel and go find a ditch or something to dig. There's a lot of times that people are looking for symptoms of depression all around them. And they want somebody else that's depressed like they are to be satisfied. Now, let's go back, because I want to, and I don't have time tonight, but we'll go into the greatest anti-depressive saint that I know that's ever been mentioned in the Bible is Job. Do you know they even have Jesus Christ depressed in this world society, even in the Church of Christ sometimes? You know how they have Christ depressed? Yeah. Oh, Father, if you'll just take this from me, not my will, but thine be done. And they'll say, well, you know, Jesus was depressed. He'd given up. Yeah. They have no idea what was going on or what he was talking about. He wasn't depressed. He was a different kind of being. With him as God, the way to serve was to give and to suffer and to be the servant. That's the reason Isaiah called him the suffering servant. Man doesn't understand that. So what happened to our boy Elijah? Well, I didn't get to it, but let's go to it. And we'll read. Verse 14 of chapter 19. I've been very zealous for the Lord God of hosts, because the children of Israel have forsaken thy covenant, thrown down thine altars, and slain thy prophets with the sword. And I, even I only, am left, and they seek my life to take it away. And the Lord said unto him, Go, return on the way to the wilderness of Damascus. And when thou comest, anoint Hazael to be king over Syria. And Jehu the son of Nimshi shalt thou anoint to be king over Israel. And Elisha the son of Shaphat of Abel-Maholah shalt thou anoint to be a prophet in thy room. Uh-oh. Did he get his request? In thy room. See, Elijah was going to die. And so God said, you can just anoint your successor. And it shall come to pass that him that escapeth the sword of Hazael shall Jehu slay. And him that escapeth from the sword of Jehu shall Elisha slay. Yet I have left me 7,000 in Israel, all the knees which have not bowed unto Baal, and every mouth which hath not kissed him. So he departed thence, and found Elisha the son of Shaphat, who was plowing with a 12 yoke of oxen before him, and he with the 12th. And Elijah passed him by, and cast his mantle upon him. And he left the oxen, and ran after Elijah, and said, Let me, I pray thee, kiss my father and my mother, and then I will follow thee. And he said unto him, Go back again, for what have I done to thee? Now remember when that guy came up to Jesus and he said, Lord, let me go bury my father. Let me go back and take care. Jesus said, you got to take up your cross and follow me. You don't go back and make things amend. And he returned back from him and took a yoke of oxen and slew them and boiled their flesh and the instruments of the oxen and gave unto the people, and they did eat. Then he arose and went after Elijah and ministered unto him. What you're seeing, and I'm not bragging on people extraordinarily, what you're seeing paraded in front of the world because of the Hurricane Harvey is a people that can't be broken. Oh yeah, there's some feel sorry for themselves and won't help. But if you look at these people, who was it that was telling me today that the interstates coming into this area were all almost without an ability to get by, with people bringing their boats and all that to help these people that are in all this distress. And I personally think that Trump kind of got the spirit of the people, because what he was doing and did say was really true. This didn't happen in a regular place. This happened in Texas. You've just got the attitude of heart and of mind of people that just don't give up. You don't get in their minds. You don't control them with words. And you don't cause them to be those who are controlled by depression. Now, they teach this in school. They tell you this is what you ought to be. This is tell you how you ought to live. That, you know, you are really picked on. Nobody really loves you. There's a lot of times that I have people come to me to tell me how sad the story is of how they were raised and how they were hungry and how they didn't have shoes, how they didn't have that and all that. And I listen because I am sympathetic and I'm not being anything special. But you see, I remember that my great-great-grandmother came off the Trail of Tears. If you've ever read about humanity being inhuman to humanity, you ought to go back and read a little of that.
Grapes of wrath, is that what you're talking about? The grapes of wrath?
No, they didn't call it that, but that'd be a good word for it.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
Trail of Tears.
The Trail of Tears.
Trail.
Yeah. That's when they drove all the Indians and stuff out of North Carolina and killed about 80% of them, getting them to Oklahoma. And what those people did, you know, some of the saddest stories that have ever been told is humanity being inhumane to humanity. And what happens is that the people that will do that allow it. Solomon was a man, if you read and study after his life, was given to fits and bouts of depression. But I'm going to tell you right now, he didn't get it from his daddy. His daddy was about, according to what we understand, about 4'6", 4'7". A little redheaded twerp. Nobody gave him much attention. Now, he had a couple of brothers that got to 6 foot, they tell us. And when he got to the camp and he heard this 9'6" or 9'9", big boy, cursing the army of God, he said, somebody's not going to do anything about it? Who's on the Lord's side? Can't somebody take up for the Lord? And his older brother came over and said, shut up. All you're wanting is a little notoriety. Now, there are people that way. But David had with him, as we say in today's parlance, he was packing. You know what David was packing? No, he found the 5 stones. A slingshot. Yeah, he was packing. Now, can you imagine the slingshot's going to kill that giant? Do you think David got that impression from God? And when he passed over that brook and he found those 5 stones, or those, how big were they? I don't know. But I can tell you right now, he was a good shot. They were pebbles? And Google tell you that? Oh, the art book. Okay, that's fine. I didn't know where you got that. I just never heard that. I didn't know how big they were. Well, anyway, he found 5 of them. Can I ask you why he only found 5?
If he hasn't got him by 5, he's in trouble.
Right, Mike. That's right.
Better start running.
After the 5th one, I'm out of here.
That's some fast running and some slow dying, huh? No, he reached down there and got those 5. How many did it take? One.
Cut his head off with his own.
He had 4 to back him up. Now, to me, that shows a completely different attitude than what you see in the world today.
A lot different than his brothers.
Of course, the Lord didn't choose him as king either, did he? Don't be given to this concept of depression. It's the new psychological trait of defeatism that they're trying to sell our kids and society so they can control us. Who's the they? It may be you, because you're allowing it to overwhelm you and overcome you. If you're here tonight and need to respond to the invitation of the gospel, Jesus said, he that believeth and is baptized shall be saved. All of these apostles that took this message to the world, every one of them died because they took that message. But did they stop? They tell me, I've told you many times about the cave of Malkapa. Haven't I? This was a cave in Rome. And when they found the cave of Malkapa back about 50 years ago, there was a sign on the outside of it, carved, 50 souls had spent their days in the cave of Malchaba. Of those 50 souls, and this was on the side of a hill and it went back into the mountains in Rome. Of those 50 souls, there was Paul and Peter. Now, the story goes that when Paul and Peter were there in that cave, all those men, none of them except Peter and Paul, were members of the Lord's church until Paul and Peter were put in the cave. Now, the guy who was the captain of the cave of Malchaba was supposed to be Nero's girlfriend's brother. And by the time that they found this cave, they found the story where every one of those men were baptized into Christ for the remission of sins. Somebody said, well, how in the world could you baptize them? There wasn't any water there. Well, you see, you just didn't do what they did. Because according to this history, and it's still over there, that cave, there is a tributary that goes back through there, or a channel that goes back there. When it gets back there, it opens up to a whole great big body of water. And they baptized every one of them into Christ. So we can still do the will of the Lord. We can still make sure that we serve God. Not let somebody that's trying to destroy our ability to understand the God of heaven not to allow us to spend eternity with Him. Would you stand, please? We're going to sing 323. And let's just sing 3 verses. First, second, and last.